Hello, everybody. This is Desk Talk 5. This is Helena. It's nice to see you guys again. And then I have Melanie.
Hi.
And nice to meet all of you and see you again.
We just want to say how happy we are to be back and to be making another video with you guys and getting to talk about certain subjects. I'm just really looking forward to talking to you guys about immigration because that's going to be our next topic. We previously discussed in the last podcast about women's rights. I think we had so much fun talking about it because once we got into it, guys, I feel like we were just all there. A quick disclaimer, real quick again, about heavy topics and stuff like that. There may be some controversial things that we're going to be bringing up, such as, immigration, women's rights, and maybe some things that you may not agree with. We just want to say and state that we are doing this as a project just to bring up stuff that we feel like are really important topics to talk about.
So one of the hot topics right now is the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni lawsuit. They're co-stars and co-producers of the movie It Ends With Us, and they're both engaged in a heated and complex legal dispute that has attracted significant public attention. The controversy is based on allegations of sexual harassment, retaliation, and defamation. Lively's allegations include she filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department accusing Baldoni of creating a hostile work environment because of his inappropriate comments and actions while filming, and she also alleged that his representatives planned a smear campaign to damage her reputation after she brought attention to these concerns. His response was that he filed a $250 million libel lawsuit against the New York Times, alleging that they relied on a biased narrative that Blake Lively provided them with while reporting her claims. He also filed a $400 million civil lawsuit against her and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, and their publicist. He accused them of extortion, defamation, and invasion of privacy. His legal team also insists that Lively's claims are false in an attempt to take creative control over the film and defame him.
Insane. I honestly think the biggest victim in that would probably be the author, the person who made the book, because you imagine they're like, this is like their big show, like this is becoming, like they're taking off with this book for the first time. I can only imagine how irritating it must be to know that the two actors that were picked to star the two main roles are causing such problems.
You know what's crazy though? She took Blake Lively's side, but it's also known that she tried to cover up her son's own actions, and he I don't know
Her
the
son?
details, but I think he was
who's
involved
her
in some
son?
sort of
Who's her
sexual
son?
harassment claim.
Who's her son?
I don't know. I know that the author's name is Colleen Hoover, but if you look it up, there's a bunch of stuff on that too. Yeah.
She's the one that produces all of those romance books.
Yeah, the movie is based off of one of her books.
Like a lot of drama and a lot of legal claim.
Yeah, it says that on Reddit it mentioned allegations against her son, suggesting that Hoover's response to these situations was inadequate. However, details remain sparse and that much of it's based on unverified claims. I'm sure, where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm sure there was something about it, but I'm sure it wasn't something. If it was big enough, it would have hit news. You know what I'm saying? Like Lively.
Yeah. What's crazy about this whole thing? It's crazy to watch from the outside because she'll say stuff and then he'll post either videos or recordings to basically prove her wrong. So it's kind of crazy. She spent the whole press tour talking about how it was so difficult to work with him and all this stuff, and didn't include him in most of the stuff when he's the director, producer, etc. And he stayed quiet because he seems like a nice guy.
That seems like some ENTP behavior.
Basically, they're going after the author because the author only produced a one-sided story.
Yeah, well, I think what they're going after the author for wasn't the Blake Lively situation. It was the relationship in the book between, I think, the sexual allegations in the book versus covered heavy topics, and it didn't cover them as deeply and as accurately as it should have been portrayed. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't when it comes to, I honestly haven't read the book, so I can't really speak much on it, but I think it was something along those lines where it was the heavy adult topics they were covered very lightly and very they were given a romantic filter. You know what I'm saying? So it was given
it sounds like from his view is that she only wrote this from Blake's view. Right?
Yeah, so you're talking about from the female lead's view. So that's what it seems like. And I think I remember it was domestic abuse. That's what it was. It was domestic abuse. So she was covering the topic, but people were saying she romanticized it to an extent, and it was it wasn't supposed to be like that. But then it also said there was also something about it in the book about how it was actually much more serious in the book, but the movie portrayed it more romantically. So I think it was kind of one of those things where it was the book was still romanticized, but it was more accurate and more real life versus the movie being romanticized, right? Because they don't want to, when it comes to movies like that, they're all about making money. They're going to kind of like add
Pain
flowers.
that will bring the most
I think Blake Lively trying to take over the whole thing is what creatively changed it, because I do think I've seen like some of his interviews and stuff. Justin Baldoni does talk about how he wanted to bring like awareness to domestic violence and stuff like that, and how he actually talked to like a bunch of victims and stuff and worked with them when making the movie. But I think his version was very different than what Blake Lively came in and kind of, her and her husband kind of took over the whole thing.
Yeah, it's almost like they wanted to make it like a romantic comedy, but it's not. It was very much a serious, it's supposed to, from what I remember, it was a very serious and sad book. She kind of is stuck in between two different relationships. One is like, she picks a healthy relationship where it's domestic, like domestic violence. The guy who caused domestic violence. Correct us if we're wrong, chat. Like, definitely tell us and like what ended up happening in the story, because I'm sorry, I'm not gonna read it.
Before we jump all the way in, one thing I wanted to recommend to you guys is check out our first episode. We released it on March 30th. That episode covers women's rights, and it was very fun filming and recording that. We got into some really great details and discussed some real life situations that I think put perspective on a lot of those things. So check that out. Follow us on TikTok. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, this is for a group project for school, so like help us out.
It's recording. Talking about immigration, but real quick, I'm just gonna kind of like break it down for you guys. We're gonna start off with some basic definitions and what is immigration, right? So we want to talk about what that is. Immigration is the action of coming to live permanently in a foreign country, whether to escape persecution, death, illness, or for a better life. We wanted to highlight the differences so you guys don't get it confused, the difference between immigration and emigration. One starts with an I, one starts with an E. But immigration and emigration lies in the perspective of movement. So immigration refers to entering a new country to live permanently or temporarily, and immigration refers to leaving one's home country to live elsewhere. So an example of immigration would be like Elon Musk immigrated from the U.S. to an example of emigration is Elon Musk immigrated from South Africa to pursue opportunities abroad in America. Right, so vice versa. It just depends on what perspective you're looking at it from. So in short, if you're coming into a country, immigration. If you're leaving a country, emigration. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with the age of exploration. So we're going to start with the history. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I know it's going to be a lot of information going forward, but this is like a summary of what I found. So I just bear with me, guys. Where I started off with the beginning of immigration was the age of exploration, which is the 15th to the 17th century. So we know that if we study some history, right, or if anyone who's taken history classes would understand that during the 15th to 17th century, many, such as Spain, Portugal, and later France and England and the Netherlands, began to explore and colonize other parts of the world. Well, we just love that. European colonization is so great, y'all. So this led to many people immigrating and emigrating to different countries of parts of the world, which unfortunately included forced immigration of some people. For example, the Africans being enslaved and sent to the Americas. This colonization also brought many Europeans into the New World, which resulted in the displacement and assimilation of Native Americans and other indigenous populations. One example of displacement and assimilation would be the Trail of Tears under President Andrew Jackson, who displaced many Native Americans and forced them on the Trail of Tears halfway across the Americas, where many died of starvation, illness, or plague. So it was very, very, I'm covering it briefly, but it was very, I can't get into the details. It was very tragic. The Trail of Tears refers to the forced relocation of Native American tribes, primarily Cherokee, along with Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole, from their ancestral lands in the southeastern United States to a designated in the interior, present-day Oklahoma. During the 1830s. This resulted from the Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed by Andrew Jackson, and later enforced under President Martin Van Buren. The relocation was executed by the U.S. government, especially the U.S. Army and state militias. The process was extremely brutal and unforgiving, and involved forced marches under harsh conditions, and an estimated 4,000 to 6,000 Cherokee Indians, Native American people, died due to disease, starvation, and exposure. The Trail of Tears remains one of the darkest chapters of U.S. history, symbolizing the suffering and displacement of many Native American communities. So, from that topic, I'm going to jump to a closer modern day sticker. We're going to try to stick to closer present day America. So, I'm going to jump to the 18th and 19th, where we as Americans started noticing immigration problems. So, we've already settled into the United States at this point now, and have our colonies and cities set up. And we're now talking about the early colonial migration. Most immigrants to North America came from Europe, particularly England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, and France. Many were seeking religious freedom and economic opportunities or fleeing political persecution. One thing I want to mention is throughout the immigration to Americas, there was something known as indentured servitude, where many immigrants, primarily from Britain and Ireland, came as indentured servants, working a set number of years in exchange for passage to the New World. And then there was forced migration of Africans, which I mentioned earlier, during the transatlantic strait, which brought hundreds of thousands of Africans to the Americas, mainly to work on plantations in the southern U.S., the Caribbean, and South America. And then there was the Naturalization Act of 1790. The U.S. law granted citizenship only to free white persons. Keyword, free white persons, excluding non-whites, Native Americans, and enslaved Africans from naturalization. Jumping forward another century to the 19th century, the 1800s, there was a mass European migration. Millions of people from Ireland, Germany, Italy, and Scandinavia and Eastern Europe arrived in the U.S. due to industrialization, political upheaval, and economic hardship. The Irish migration started in the 1850s and went through the 80s. The Irish potato famine from 1845 to 1852 led to a mass migration, especially to the U.S., where Irish immigrants settled into cities like New York and Boston. And then there was the German migration. I keep saying migration. Immigration. My bad, y'all. Political unrest in Germany, especially after the failed 1848 revolutions. The economic challenges led to a large influx of German immigrants, many of whom moved to the Midwest. And then we begin the westward expansion, the Great Dream, right? And the Manifest Destiny, which I'm sure many of y'all remember in civics class, was very heavily talked about. Immigration fueled the U.S. expansion, with new arrivals moving westward for land and opportunity, such as Chinese immigration exclusion was then established. The California Gold Rush in 1849 attracted many Chinese immigrants who later worked on Transcontinental Railroad. The Chinese Exclusion Act happened in 1882. And if you guys look it up, there's lots of propaganda talking about the migration. This is something that my civics class covered in high school, where my teacher made sure to cover political propaganda during those time periods. It was quite interesting how they depicted them. I recommend you guys look it up. Back to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was the first primary U.S. law restricting immigration based on race and nationality. Then, as you guys remember, Ellis Island opened up, so this is back towards New York in 1892, became the primary immigration processing center in the U.S., handling millions of newcomers. Some key takeaways during this time period would be the push and pull factors, which I'm sure many of you remember, they talked about it too. People immigrated due to the war, famine, economic hardship, and opportunities in America, which is called the push and pull factors. Then there's discrimination and xenophobia. Immigrants during this time started facing hostility, especially the Irish, Chinese, and Eastern Europeans. And then the industrialization, immigrants provided labor for factories, railroads, and agriculture, fueling economic growth. Now, many of you are probably wondering, if many, I say many, but probably for a few of you, how did early Americans react to immigration? So, early Americans kind of looked at it like there was economic needs and cultural identity, as well as national security concerns that shaped Americans' attitudes towards immigration in the 18th and 19th centuries. While some embraced immigrants as essential to growth, others feared their impact on American society, leading to discrimination and restrictive policies. There were some mixed reactions to immigration during the early colonial era. Immigration was actually broadly welcomed by settlers because they needed to populate and develop the colonies. Most immigrants were European Protestants, so English, Scots, Irish, Germans, Dutch, etc., and they were generally accepted, although religious and ethnic tensions did exist. Not shocked when we're talking about. Oh yeah, especially after the Catholic versus the Protestants. Lord, I can only imagine. And then you're talking about the Chinese and stuff, and like you're bringing like a whole bunch of different religions all into one giant melting pot. We're gonna skip towards the Revolutionary period and early U.S. Republic. So now during this time, many Americans that have been there were becoming suspicious of foreign influence. After the American Revolution, the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798 allowed the government to detain or deport immigrants that they deemed a threat. mainly targeting French and Irish immigrants who were seen as sympathetic to the revolutionary causes in Europe. Only free white persons could become citizens because of the Naturalization Act of 1790, excluding Native Americans and enslaved Africans and non-European groups. Now we're getting closer. We're still going to the 19th century. Now, I want to bring up growing xenophobia and nativism. We've now established, essentially, most people have expanded, as we talked to the westward expansion, across America. So now you're talking about these people settling in and getting to know their neighbors and living among their neighbors. And during the early 80s, immigration encouraged for labor. As the U.S. expanded westward and industrialized, immigrants were needed to work in the factories, build infrastructure like railroads, and settle new territories. Germans and Irishmen arrived in large numbers, but they faced discrimination, especially for their religion, because many were Catholic. So a lot of Protestants moved, yes.
Not just that topic, but the one before that. I didn't realize that we had a time period where we deported immigrants, which means people that were legally here, not illegally here, but legally here, that were deemed a threat, which, you know, a lot of people right now are freaking out because we're deporting illegal aliens. We at one point deported people. Basically, you're basically deleting them.
Yes.
Deported people that were here legally that seemed like they were threats. I mean, I understand because a lot of people, including myself, didn't know this till today. A lot of people probably don't realize that there was already a point where we deported people who were threats. Now we're deporting people who are not even legally here that are threats.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic because like deportation is nothing new. I just think you have to also think about what guidelines they went by to deport people. Like you were here and you were an immigrant and you were here by legal means and you had papers and came through Ellis Island. You had to walk on your tippy toes. It was very much like you didn't want to step on somebody's toes and then get sent back, you know? So I can only imagine the anxiety because you're talking about some were escaping religious persecution as well as just persecution in general from politics, and you're talking about if you go back, you die. That is what it is. We'll talk about later, but some modern day issues that we're having is we're sending people back and there is nowhere to go back for them. If they go back, they die.
Yeah.
It's none of the stuff that I'm talking about is anything new. I think it's really important that we know this bit of history because it does relate to modern day history.
Yeah, for sure.
And during the mid 1800s, there was a rising anti-immigrant sentiment. So Irish Catholics faced intense discrimination. Many Americans, especially Protestants, saw Catholic immigrants as loyal to the Pope rather than the U.S. government. Stereotypes painted the Irish as lazy, drunken, and prone to crime. No Irish, and I quote, they said this in job listings, no Irish need apply.
That puts it, I'm just going to say this. People have such a problem with modern day history, or modern day things that are happening. I am realizing now how much worse it could be.
It could be so much worse.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're talking about these people do all the tedious labor jobs, and we're talking about, you know what? We'll find somebody else to fill your shoes that, you know, will conform to our standards. We'll send you right back.
What's tripping me out right now is no Irish need apply. Like, they were seriously discriminating. And I don't know, I just feel like we've come a long way. I'm sure we've got room for improvement, but we've come a long way since this. This is wild.
And I know, and it feels like when we get onto the topic of modern day immigration, it's going to feel like we took so many steps forward to, like, get past that point. Like, we've came hundreds of years, right? And then I feel like we're taking a bunch of 100 years back. We're really taking up like 1,000 steps back.
Some things, and I mean, other things I feel like we kind of learned from a lot. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
There's so much... I look back at things and I feel so sorry for some of these people. Truly.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about their living situations are very poor back then, too. Remember, we're still in early colonial area. Like, you
don't even have the funds to defend yourself.
No, you don't have the funds or the knowledge. You're talking about half the people that are coming are not educated. Like, it's...
What legal counsel?
There is no legal counsel!
They probably didn't even have... I don't know if they had loans back then. Did they have banks? I have no idea.
Yeah, they did. It was established when we first became a nation with Alexander Hamilton. 1991. So the bank had already been around. We're in the 1800s, so it had already been around for about 10 or so years. It was already been around for a decade, so it would have been fully operational and functional about that point. I'm sure there were still errors and issues.
Yeah.
Technicalities.
I agree, though. I feel like we have a long way to go, but it seems like it could definitely be worse.
It could definitely be worse.
After hearing all this.
I'm not even done. That's the sad part. We're just in the 1800s. We haven't even hit 1900s yet. And it
I
gets
don't think people realize that it definitely could be worse in this day and age.
Oh yeah, and it gave rise to the Know Nothing Party in the 80s, which is a political movement based on nativism, favoring native-born Americans over immigrants. It pushed for strict immigration laws and opposed Catholic influence in politics. So what we're looking at is the first, like, I guess, real issue of state versus state separate from church problem. You know what I'm saying? Because it seems like people feared Catholics really like intervening in politics.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. And then in the late 1800s, they started restrictive policies, and the xenophobia. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering it, but xenophobia started growing even more. But like at first, it was like more like civil unrest and like constant doubts, and now we're really getting into it. So the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was the first major federal law banning immigration based on race and nationality. But many Americans on the West Coast blamed Chinese immigrants for taking jobs and driving down wages. But if we all know that most Chinese immigrants were probably taking on jobs that many Americans wouldn't do anyway. So, the immigration processing at Ellis Island in 1892, while millions of Americans were processed here, many faced medical exams and legal questioning that sometimes resulted in deportation. So, if you didn't even make it past screening, you were sent back. I don't know if any of you have ever looked at Ellis Island, but like how it's structured, you could see like when we were learning about it, it was very interesting where they kept them in these wards and medical unit wards, and like you would literally stand there and like I think they like pitched tents and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, they had like tents pitched where you would stay outside or something. Like you wouldn't stay in the building. There were so many immigrants they didn't have enough room for them. And then there was the push for assimilation. Immigrants were pressured to adopt American customs and language and values to fit in, and we still see that to this day. I feel like I see that every time we like every time somebody foreign comes into America, like you can see how shocked they are culture wise and how different our customs are from their customs. Do any of you guys know anybody who was foreign that felt maybe pressured to, assimilate into American society or be like Americans?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit from Lewis, a classmate. He's from Dominican Republic and talked about how much more opportunities there are here and different things that he didn't know before coming here or different ways of acting. I feel like you're a bit more free here. You have more opportunities. You probably have more, what would you say, economically you have more options here, whereas over there's not as many opportunities. The living wages are probably lower. You have a bit more freedom to decide what you want to do, but in the same breath, I could imagine the exact opposite of that. Imagine somebody coming from somewhere like Iraq where it's nothing but, I won't say nothing but there's a lot of brutal things that happen there. And then trying to fit into society here. I mean, think about it in terms of just our veterans that go, to another country and fight wars. It's difficult just returning home. So imagine someone who's been living in that their entirety of their life and now suddenly midlife or even young life, you come here. Do you act in violence? I know a lot of folks do. They act in violence because that's all they know and that's tolerated there. Whereas here, you better walk a fine line or you're going to get put right back where you came from. So I look at it in terms of even just our veterans that just visit there and come home. It's difficult to return here. All there, and that's everyday life for them there. So I mean, I can imagine that it's difficult to come here and to experience this. I mean, Helena, I don't remember what his name is, but we had that kid that's from Russia in our class who's here on a visa, and he was talking about how different things are here, and it just seemed like he was on vacation. His demeanor was like, I'm on vacation. He was just like always optimistic, happy. He's like, and I'm so curious about what things are like over there, and
I'm sure it's really bad. You have to think about it, especially coming from Russia. I feel like there they would be monitored more. You have to be careful what you say because you could be listened in on and you could be killed. The same thing could be said for I actually knew somebody who came from the Middle East, and she was like, cause I asked her, I was like, well, what's it like over there? What is it different, right? And she used to work with me at Publix. And she was like, you can't talk bad about your president. Like, you can't talk bad about your leader. If you talk, you will get shot and killed. They will kill you. You can't voice your thoughts or opinions, especially as a woman, she said, because she was a girl. She's like, you have to remain covered up. Otherwise, you're assumed that you're provocative and you're asking to be, y'all know what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But It was very, she said it was very strict. Like there's very strict rules. She's like, what you're wearing, you couldn't wear pants. You have to adjust the social norms. You are not allowed to wear certain things. You are not allowed to speak out of turn. When you don't talk unless spoken to. It was very, very different, the culture. I was like, I can't imagine not being able to say what I want to say. You know what I'm saying? Like just certain things that were very different from American culture. That's why I love it here. She said, I can say whatever I want. F this and F that. She went off on a tangent, and it was so funny.
It's kind of crazy. I don't know anybody personally, but my mom and I watch a lot of reality TV. And one of the shows we like to watch is 90 Day Fiancé. So it's basically like people dating people from all these different countries, and then they come here and they have 90 days to get married. But anyway, there's this guy that this girl brought over, and he's from Iran. And it was just wild seeing his like reactions to everything because things are so different, like the way women can act, dress, etc. Like he even talks about it. He's like, none of this is like allowed there. It's crazy.
And that's the exact reason why I say I'm a liability and I probably should not leave America, because I do say how I feel 90% of the time. I love the truth, whether it hurts or it doesn't, and I would probably end up saying something I should not and probably be in jail or prison or whatever. One person.
That's why it's really important for those of you who are watching who have never traveled to always read about the country you're going to and read the rules, laws, and regulations, because last thing we need is for y'all to be traveling to Singapore and know that you can't spit gum out or have gum at all, otherwise you get caned. And in Singapore, I learned that there is no, oh, you spit gum out, you get like 5 licks. No, they beat you with the cane until they think you've learned your lesson.
That is crazy.
When you're in and it's like really important to remember as like a travel, this is one of the reasons like when I travel, I have to be like super like careful about it. Like when you're there, you have to adhere to that country's laws. It's not like in America, I get it that you're an American, you want to probably do what you want to do. Not saying that everyone's like this, but we have to remember, we're not in America anymore. You're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. You're somewhere else.
One person I didn't think about is my stepmom. She's from the Philippines, and most of her family still lives there. Her coming here, she came here for, I want to say, educational opportunities. Over there, they're very wealthy, and they're very royal, I guess you would say. Like, she has family that's in, her mom's a pediatrician, her uncle is, like, very high up in politics and things of that nature. So over there, you have maids, you have, all these folks that wait on you and whatnot. Wages are very different there than here. Well, when her mom, you don't have shopping and stuff over there. Like, she'll go shopping with her mom when her mom comes here, and her mom wants to shop every day because she doesn't get to shop over there. But coming here, it's a culture shock because now you have to clean your house. Over there, you don't prefer to drive at least an older person. Her mother doesn't. Because it's worse than New York City ever thought about being. In New York, I wouldn't want to drive there either. So you rent Ubers, you do things of that nature. It's extremely hot there. So here, you get here and it's like, oh, there's all these places and things you can do and you can drive. What's it like driving a car? If you don't drive all the time. So in a sense of royalty and like, what you can do and things of that nature, it just seems like everybody's timid. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like as Americans, we are just like, woohoo, wild and free. We do what we want, that kind of thing. Whereas people come here, they're like, wait a minute. You don't dress like that. You don't do that. Or, Helena, I'm sure you remember this, me asking the Russian kid in class about weapon exposure because I've purchased weapons from there. So I figured this guy probably has some knowledge. Absolutely not. He looked at me like I had 4 eyes. Like,
oh yeah, I totally agree with you. Like also the amount of, I remember reading, I don't know if I was watching a show or reading something, but somebody had talked about foreigners talking about how bad gun violence is in America. They're like, and how desensitized we are to it. Like, it's crazy how desensitized we are to it. Like, because it's every day. It's an everyday thing when it comes to gun violence. Like, not even too long ago, they were talking about that there was supposed to be some gang activity in downtown Jacksonville that was supposed to happen this weekend. And how I got cued in with my kids, who I don't know if they know anybody, but they had heard that something was supposed to happen after a recent gang activity thing that happened in Orange Park. It was crazy. I was like, that's nice to know.
It is crazy. And what's even sadder is a lot of those people that look at America, they probably think we're all crazy. And in reality, those people that are doing all of that are obtaining guns illegally. They're not getting guns legally. They are clearly hood rats and criminals, so they should be put behind bars. Whereas you look at an everyday citizen like myself that has weapons or enjoys, using weapons or hunting or any of that, everybody assumes you're crazy. You're not crazy. I use it as it should be. I don't use or violence.
I think the problem also is it's not just those who are illegal and obtaining it by illegal means, but also mental health. Like some people just have guns and that should not have guns. And I feel like it gives America really a bad rep because it's not like everyone is like that. Like
Yeah.
not everyone has a gun and uses that gun to hunt. Sometimes it's simply just for protection because you live in a bad area. Like
Oh,
there is lots of light.
even though I don't live in a bad area. But I get what you're saying for sure. And just okay, so for example, you notice how early we were talking about how there was an immigration screening, and if you basically didn't pass the test, you were rejected. I feel like we should do the same things for guns.
That's
Oh yeah,
true.
no, I brought up that to I don't know who I was talking to about it, but I said, I feel like there should be definitely a mental screening for some people and
I agree with you entirely. There should be a screening because people think because you can carry a gun legally that you can just whip it out anytime. Absolutely not. That's the furthest thing from the truth. And those people that are ignorant like that, they shouldn't have a gun.
Agreed.
I for real. And I feel like it shouldn't just be like a one-time screening. I feel like you should get regular mental health checks like at least once a month. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think that'd be redundant once a month. That'd be a lot for the government to keep up
Or
with.
once every 90 days or something. Like just to be like, "Hey, are you good?" Because there are some people that like I remember my dad was telling me a story, and just a graphic warning for those who are listening. He was working at Dick's Sporting Goods, and Dick's Sporting Goods has a hunting section where you can go buy a gun and you can get bullets and stuff like that. Well, this gentleman came in and he didn't look. There was nothing off about him. He was wearing a suit and tie, very professional, very had decorum, is what my dad described him as. And he walked up to the counter and he asked to buy a gun. He's like, "I'd like to see a gun, please." And he buys this gun. And no sooner than the guy sets the bullets on the table and stuff, he looks away for 1 second and the guy is loading the gun like in the store. And clicks it and unlocks it and then kills himself in the store.
That's a mental health issue. See, and that's where the
Man.
misconception is it's a mental health issue, truly.
Oh yeah, so I said some people that like I think that you shouldn't be able to buy a gun same day. You shouldn't be able to. I think that there should be screening, like you said. There should be a screened portion where you wait like 2 to 3 days. It's like ordering a package. You wait 2 to 3 days and you'll get it later. You know what I'm saying?
So, that guy, it sounds like he was like holding the gun to check it out in the store and loaded it because you can't pick it up same day unless you have a concealed weapon permit. I think I would have to look at that. I'm pretty sure if you have a concealed weapon permit,
when that happened, it was like 20 years ago. It was like 15, 20 years. I don't know if it had changed since then because it was a while back. It wasn't anything recent.
You definitely have to wait at least, I want to say at least 3 days unless you have a concealed weapon permit. And even with a concealed weapon permit, I don't think you can always get them.
Yeah.
Pretty sure she's right on that one.
I think
So these people are getting it, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If I'm buying a gun, I definitely want to hold it. I want to know: can I cock that thing back? Can I not? Can I load it? Can I put the magazine in there? Can I put the magazine back in there? How quickly? What would I use this for? Would I use it for tactic use? Would I use it for self-defense? What would I use it for? Especially these guys with like their hunting rifles and stuff. But the pistols, man, that stuff makes me nervous. If you came up to my counter with a box of bullets, you ain't getting this pistol.
I agree. I also agree that I think that there should be certain guns people don't have access to. Like no one should have access to an AK-47 or anything like that. Any automatic like rifle like that. I get that there's some that are used for hunting, but I feel like there should be definitely a line drawn for some, like there's just some guns people shouldn't have. I think they're too dangerous.
Heavy topic too, like the AR-15 bans and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I've seen some horrific situations, but I also know plenty of people that have them and they'll use them for fun, for target shooting and whatever. I don't know. I mean, I've been around guns my entire life, so guns don't put me in fear of anything. It's nothing to fear for me. But I also know how irresponsible people can be. And they give these people a bad rep because I don't know what the statistics are, but I mean, thank God, I don't know anyone that's done anything crazy like that ever. And I know plenty of people with guns. I would say 4 and 5 people I know on firearms of all types. And I get it why they say that a lot of people shouldn't have access to some of these things, but I think a lot of it boils back down to the mental health thing. I think the mental health portion of it. But there's also, people that deal with everyday things that are human, like police officers that commit suicide and things of that nature. So it's hard. Once again, I'm always thankful that I'm not in the position to have to please everybody because there's such a broad audience to cater to.
It's extremely, and that's where we run into a lot of problems with modern day stuff. It's such a broad topic, and there's religion you have to take into account, culture things you have to take into account, gender things you have to take into account, and it's a very convoluted subject, and like and there is no right way. There's
Right.
definitely a wrong way, but there's definitely like no right way.
Right, you can't please everybody. You can't solve all the problems, but I think truly like I mean this is after 31 years of paying attention to this. Literally when I was a kid I was around guns a lot. I think it boils down to mental health, you know?
I think it does too. I think
I
it's a
really
big
think
factor.
it is. And I mean it's kind of like when people will freak out when it's bad cop, everybody's a bad cop. I always tell people at the end of the day those are humans in uniform. No matter what your title is, you're a human. There are people, think about pastors that commit suicide. Think about, these military guys that commit suicide. Think about police officers that commit suicide. Think about everyday Joes that commit suicide. Think about, at the end of the day, they're humans, and
They're not perfect.
no, and it doesn't
No.
matter what their title is. They're a human at the end of the day, and we're imperfect.
And oh yeah.
We make mistakes. Sometimes they're worse than others, but
Yeah,
Yeah, and I always used to go on this debate with my mother about people. She used to be like, there's bad people in the world. I was like, no, there's no such thing as good or bad people because good and bad are inherent in everybody. There's only
right.
people that make good or bad choices.
So true. I know some good people that make some bad choices. And I always say, it doesn't matter who they are. Every person you meet has something to teach you. Whether it's, if you think lesser of homeless people, that homeless guy has something to teach you about life. Whereas the most, pristine individual or, whoever you idolize, that person has something to teach you just as much as the next. So it's like, even through our mistakes, like look at history, what we're learning about right now. I'm learning a ton and I'm like, that has a lot to teach me, just like we were talking about. It could be worse,
same.
it could be better, but wow, this is wild. Like, there's something to take from all of it because just like I was saying, like, I can't believe people that basically misbehaved and were legally here, you're sent back just because you misbehaved.
Oh yeah, like talking out of turn, it could be.
And that's even at some point modern stuff. Like I don't remember exactly what it was. I remember a speech though about if you I forget what it was about taking away their visa. This is recent. And that's kind of like the same thing. If you're not going to obey our laws here, get out. And I mean, I respect it to some degree. You can't be coming over here with all that, what would you say, brutal behavior and expect to stay.
No, and I think that it's smart on them because you can't expect people to do what's right.
I know.
There's just too much. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up with some key themes in American reactions to immigration: economic needs versus xenophobia. While immigration provided labor for industry and expansion, Americans often resented newcomers for competing for jobs, which we see today in today's time too. People talk about, like, especially in college, they're taking certain things and they're taking our jobs and they're taking opportunities that we deserve, right? So there's something that's always been prevalent. And then there's the religious and ethnic discrimination of the Irish and Southern Eastern Europeans, especially Catholic and Jews. They faced hostility from a Protestant majority of Americans. And then there's nationalism and fear of foreign influence. Many Americans feared that too many immigrants, especially those from non-English speaking countries, would dilute American culture. And then early immigration laws and restrictions, policies like the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Alien and Sedition Acts, reflected growing efforts to control who would enter and stay in the U.S. Overall, the immigration and views in the 18th and 19th centuries were deeply divided. While some saw immigration as vital to economic and territorial expansion, others feared it would undermine American culture, jobs, and national security. A lot of these tensions led to waves of anti-immigrant sentiment, discriminatory laws, and political movements, of which foreshadowed many modern debates on immigrations. Just to give you guys an example, xenophobia is the fear and hatred or distrust of foreigners or people from different cultures or countries. It often led to discrimination, exclusion, hostility towards immigrants and ethnic minorities. Some key aspects of xenophobia are cultural fear. People believe that immigrants threaten their national identity, language, and traditions. Economic anxiety. Some fear that immigrants will take jobs, lower wages, or strain public resources. Religious or racial prejudice. Xenophobia can be tied to racism or religious intolerance, leading to discrimination of specific groups. And political influence. Politicians sometimes use xenophobia to rally support by blaming outsiders for societal problems. There's just that last point I feel like really focuses on a lot of modern day stuff, such as with Mexico and the wall and the border. So capitalizing on xenophobic things, talking about how a lot of immigrants kill people or commit crimes. We'll have to find the statistic for it later in our later video about how many crimes immigrants do commit versus Americans, and are they worse than Americans, and does that really affect us? I do want to bring that up later. But some historical examples of xenophobia was the anti-Irish Irish sentiment we talked about in the 1800s, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, and World War II Japanese internment of the 1980s. Japanese Americans were forcibly relocated to internment camps out of fear that they were enemy spies. So xenophobia is not just historical, it exists today in debates over immigration and national security and culture. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Devin with some modern day examples of xenophobia.
Okay, so let's cover modern examples of xenophobia. The first one is anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States of America. One example of this is Trump's travel ban, which is 2017 to 2021, which restricted entry from several Muslim-majority countries, citing national security concerns. Critics argue that it was based on Islamophobia rather than actual threats. Another example is the family separation at the border in 2018. U.S. immigration policies under Trump led to thousands of migrant children being separated from their parents at the Mexico-U.S. border. This sparked an international outrage and accusation of inhumane threat of immigrants. So were they coming in legally or illegally when that happened?
So I'm sure there were some legal kids involved in there, but there was lots of controversy, and it'll probably be something we talk about in the next video, where there were a lot of kids, illegal and legal, getting separated from their parents, because it's like today, there's a bunch of people, like ICE is just bursting down people's doors and just taking people and just putting them and locking them up and deporting them without like really any representation or rhyme or reason. So a lot of these kids got misplaced or were lost in the system, I would say, and they are not, I shouldn't say lost, but like not accounted for. And so,
Yeah.
and the problem is that they're stuck in the system, and some parents are probably still trying to locate their kids.
Right, I'm just wondering, specific for this story, were they coming in legally at the Mexico border or illegally?
Both. It was
I
a
hate
mixture of both.
You're taking trying to get into a country illegally, assuming that you're going to stay together. They're not going to treat you well if you're entering illegally.
Well, I'm sure you remember there were lots of stories of women being thrown over the wall and they were pregnant and they tried to give birth on American soil, because if they give birth on American soil, that child is illegal. Now.
But that's what I'm saying is if you're coming over the wall illegally, trying to have a baby on American soil, that's probably not a good idea.
I mean, but you imagine, I only imagine that their situation was that desperate that they had to think of that. Whoever they were trying to get away from.
For sure, but I'm just saying you can't expect to be treated,
to be welcomed, yeah.
if you're coming in illegally. Like, there is a process to come in the country legally, so go for it that way versus, that could cost your life. You're not going to get medical care if you're jumping a wall.
I think the problem, I'd have to research a little bit more, but I think the problem was lack of resources, and to come in, it's like a process. It was already tedious before everything was happening, before the updates and stuff that were recent, but before it was even more tedious. You're talking about having to pass the, I forget the exam name, but there's like an exam, or to become a legal citizen, you have to have money, and you have to know the law, and you have to pass a certain test, and you have to wait for your legal. It doesn't happen right away either. It takes months and years. Some people years to get that.
I have a friend whose husband is still in Colombia. It's been 4.5 years now, and he's still not here. They've went through 2 different attorneys representing him. So I have no idea why he's getting so much pushback. But I'm just saying, if that were me in my situation, I understand I'm desperate if that were me. But I wouldn't be expected to be treated illegally in any country, not just America. Okay, so the next one is rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans. COVID-19 pandemic led to increased xenophobia against Asians, with many being falsely blamed for the virus, which I could understand why they treat them that way when they're claiming it was made in a lab in China. I think that now they've proved that it was leaked from a lab in China, so now they're unfortunately taking it out on all of those Chinese citizens, which is wrong, but I get why they try to do that. Reports of verbal abuse, physical attacks, and even murders. That is sad. Okay, another example is xenophobia in Europe. Brexit, I'm probably butchering that, but Brexit, 2016 to present, a significant factor in UK's decision to leave the European Union was fear of mass immigration, especially from Eastern Europe and Muslim-majority countries. Anti-immigration rhetoric fueled nationalist movements. Oh, that is wicked. Another example would be refugee crisis and anti-Muslim policies. Germany, France, and Italy have seen anti-immigrant protests due to the influx of Syrian and African refugees. That is heartbreaking. France's burqa ban, and it was in 2011, and debates over banning Muslim headscarves in public schools reflecting growing Islamophobia. I want to make sure I understand this right. Islamophobia was debating whether Muslim headscarves could be worn in public schools. Wow. Xenophobia in India and China. India's Citizenship Amendment Act in 2019. This gives fast-track citizenships to refugees, but only if they are non-Muslim. Critics argued that this is anti-Muslim discrimination. Wow, we've really got some issues across the world. China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims, I'm probably butchering it.
Yeah, the Uyghur, I don't know how to say it either.
China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims. The Chinese government has placed 1 million Uyghurs, a Muslim minority, in detention camps, calling them re-education centers. They were accused of human rights violations, forced labor, and culture erasure. So they're trying to erase their culture?
So kind of like what they were doing to the Native Americans, where they were essentially getting, like, they were trying to... There's a show that talks about the brutality of, like, when Native Americans were being assimilated into American culture, and they were like girls stuck in these nunneries and stuff like that, and these nuns would be teaching them about culture and religion and everything, and it was brutal. It was brutal. They would get beaten for, like, and they weren't allowed to use their own language. They weren't allowed to keep their long hair. They cut their hair off. It was really bad.
So basically, we will beat the culture out of you.
Yes, pretty much. We'll threaten it out of you. So you cannot leave, or we'll starve you, or until you become like us.
That is so horrifying. That is horrifying. Effects of modern xenophobia. More substantial immigration restrictions. Countries have tightened immigration laws due to fears of foreign influence or national security threats. I could understand some of the national security threats. Increase of hate crimes. More attacks against ethnic minorities, including Asians, Muslims, and Latin Americans. That's sad. Political division and nationalism. Many political leaders use anti-immigrant rhetoric to gain support, furthering dividing societies. Aren't we seeing that now more than ever? Okay. The final thought is that economic struggles, misinformations, and fear of change often fuel xenophobia. While some genuinely worry about job competition or security, others exploit these fears for political gain. Yes, they do.
Hello, everybody. So we're going to wrap it up real quick, and this will be the end of part 1. So we're just going to do a quick little wrap up here with our back to school session. It's going to be 5 questions on 7th grade standards of random topics that I have created, and Devin and Melanie are going to be tasked with answering the correct question. Good luck. I'm going to wish y'all the best of luck. You got this. Let me find my questions first. I know I had them. Okay, so the first question is from geography. What is the longest river in the world?
Can I answer this outright? Right now?
You're going to answer it all at the end. So you just write it down. Just write down your answer for the first one. So what is the longest river in the world? What is the value of 3 to the second power plus 4 to the second power? What is the value of 3 to the second power plus 4 to the second power? All right. What is a simile? So for our third question is writing. What is a simile? Write a sentence using one. Then there's biology. And then it is what organ in the human body pumps blood? And the last question is what ancient civilization built the pyramids in Egypt? All right. So what was y'all's answers for the first one?
Okay, here I go. Let me go back to my little chat box. I think the Mississippi River am I right? Is that the longest one in the world?
So the longest river in the world. Oh wait, hold on, Melanie.
I was thinking US.
I don't know, the Nile in Egypt.
Ding ding ding! It is Melanie. What is the Nile River?
I was like, I don't know.
It is approximately 6,650 kilometers, or 4,130 miles long, and flows through 11 countries.
That is wild. Yeah, I didn't think country. I was thinking in the United States. Sorry, guys. I totally messed that up.
You're good. All right. What did we put for what is 3 to the second power plus 4 to the second?
25.
I had the same answer.
So 3 to the second power is 3 times 3, which is 9, and 4 to the second power is 4 times 4, which is 16. So 9 plus 16, 25.
This is why CJ calls me his Rain Man.
I can already hear in the comment section being like, that's wrong. I'll be like, correct us if we're wrong, please. Math is definitely not our fortes.
But it's been a while.
Girl, only algebra. All right. The next question was, what is a simile? Write a sentence using one. So what did y'all...
Describing something. Snug as a bug kind of thing. Like the as, like, or like, so it's like comparing something, right?
Devin?
A description of something?
All right, and then what's an example from each of you?
Crazy as a bed bug, and that's like a person who is off the chain crazy.
And Melanie?
I said like snug as a bug.
Yeah.
So a simile is a figure of speech that compares two different things using the word like or as to create a vivid image. For example, her smile was as bright as the sun.
Okay.
And then the fourth question is, what organ in the human body pumps blood?
Heart.
Heart.
Yes, it's the heart. Very, very easy.
We are some smart cookies. I mean, halfway smart, but we're smart.
All right, and then the last question is history. Is what ancient civilization built the pyramids in Egypt?
This is probably wrong, but I don't know. The Egyptian? I feel like it's wrong, but I can't remember that one.
Don't tell me because I feel like I know this. I actually see the tribe logo in my head and cannot think about it. Think of it. Oh my gosh. This is one of those questions that when she says the answer, I'm gonna be like, you
Right.
gotta be kidding me right now.
I feel like it's what I said is too easy, but I can't really think of what it is right now.
The Greek? Is it Greek? No? What am I thinking?
Their face.
What am I thinking of? No, I'm throwing in the
The
towel.
Greeks wouldn't be
It
about
was
death.
the ancient Egyptian.
So I was right. Okay. I was
I'm
like,
gonna
okay,
be honest. You go, girl.
So, all right. So, how many of y'all did y'all get incorrect?
I got two correct. I got two wrong, so three correct.
All right, and you got all five correct, Melanie.
Yeah.
You go, girl.
All right, so Melanie takes the lead this time around. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. This is part 1 of our immigration segment. We haven't even gotten into the nitty gritty stuff yet with
No,
just modern day immigration and laws and court cases and some serious issues that are happening. Don't forget to comment and like and subscribe for our section. And if you have any question in regards to where we found all this information, we will put all the links below in the description box when it's ready.
Stay tuned for our immigrant segment.